Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Bus. On this one, we are making the Hilux twin locked with an AutoLokka. So I've heard some things about the AutoLokka inner rear locker and um, how it is for road driving and tight turns. But given that this doesn't really do that tight of turns, I will be essentially just testing this and seeing how it goes for on-road driving and off-road driving. But it'll make the Hilux twin locked. Anyways, let's get into it. First things first, we have to use the hoist to put the car in the air. Now, a good trick that my old man taught me, as you'll see me do here, is actually don't raise it up too high until you've got the tyres off. Being that these are 33-inch mud tyres, they do get a little bit heavy. Now that the tyres are off, I am going to remove the 4 bolts on the back, the handbrake cable, and then the brake lines. That's what's dripping down there is brake fluid. And then the whole axle can actually just pop out. Now, I did do the axle seals in this not too long ago, along with the bearings in the rear end, because one side is flogged out, and I just thought I may as well do the other side. So this pops off very easy. Got the old fellas yarn club going on in the background of this shot. Then we've got to remove the other side axle. Again, super easy. Just a couple of 14mm bolts on the back there, and then the handbrake cable and the brake line. Now we've got to open up the diff and drain all of the oil out of it. So I'm prone to actually forgetting this. There was every chance that I would have undone my diff and then just had oil fall out everywhere, but I've actually been onto it this time. Now the oil's drained, we do have to remove the rear drive shaft, so pretty easy. Next up is the bolts holding, or the nuts holding the diff in. So they're just on studs with, I believe they are 12mm nuts, and then I believe there's 10 or so of them all the way around, 10 or 12. And then we've just got to pull those off, and then the diff can come out.
Righto. Well, here we are. Angus has removed the centre. We're having a look at the condition of the crown wheel. You can see that there's pitting on the drive side of that, and it's a little bit sharp, so it's done some work, there's no doubt about it. I think number one son has flogged the shit out of it, but that's all right. That's what happens if it's there for. It's gonna survive, but certainly there's a bit of wear, and it's got a nice amount of backlash there. You see that little movement there? That's what you want. You've got to have backlash, otherwise they don't work. So we've got to be really careful that when this comes apart, that the carrier bearings basically have the right amount of pre-load on them, so that being that we know the diff's fine, this will go back together exactly the way it came apart. So we'll measure the height of the lock ring and mark it also when it goes back together. We know it's in the same spot it was when it came apart. Now, if you look further down the pinion gear down here, you can see that it's also done a bit of work. But hey, again, old vehicle, lots of work. I'm not too stressed with what I found there. Anyway, we'll continue on.
So now I am starting to disassemble this. I have used a punch on each side of the carriers. So I've marked one side with one punch each side, and then on the other side of the carrier bearing, I have marked the other side with 2 punches each side. Just they need to go on the same way and everything exactly the same. I also took photos of the preload on the carrier bearings before I even removed those little locking tabs that hold that nut on. So removing the carrier bolts, this was a bit tricky. Pretty much every bit of tightening or loosening I've had to do on this was a bit tricky because we didn't have a proper diff mount, or I didn't weld anything up before this. So I was using a vise, and I was having to just be really smart and careful about it, so that way I didn't just send it straight out of the vise and onto the floor and then break broken teeth everywhere. And then I'm just tapping the bearing caps, so that way they pop straight off, which they do quite easily. They both come off simple as, and then the center will just lift straight out of there. Now we're getting on to the good stuff. We are actually pulling the ring gear off. So to do that, we've got to take the little locking tabs off those 19mm nuts that are locking the ring gear, and they also stop the nuts from eventually winding themselves back out, because that's a pretty common occurrence. So I know with patrol diffs, you just need to Loctite them up theirs, because they don't have those retaining clips, whereas those retaining clips are quite good. Next, we are removing the bolts. I did call them nuts before, they're most certainly bolts. So we just whack those out. Now it's time to pull the ring gear off. So typically you'd want to use some type of heat. So generally you can heat up the ring gear and expand it, so that way it will just drop off the shaft. In this case, I'm not doing that. I'm just using a flat bladed scrape, I guess you could call, making sure I'm not actually getting the corners in and scoring the back, but it slides in quite easily, and then I just move on to the copper hammer and then do the rest of the work off that way, and it seems to come off pretty easy like that. Now the limited slip casing has to come apart, so we remove all those bolts and split it up. It was about this point that I was thinking to myself, what have I done here? All the videos that I watched on this were for open diffs, not a limited slip diff. So let me try and condense about 3 hours of me trying to read and comprehend the Lokka instructions. Here we are trying to assemble the Lokka. Now, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but look how many times I'm going back to the instructions. So, it's never a good time when you have to pull out the instructions. Honestly, by this point, I was stressing. I wasn't sure how I could put it back together or anything like that. And then I finally came across a really good YouTube channel, which I recommend you subscribe to. It's called FirstLight ADV. So I'm guessing it's FirstLight Adventures. Definitely go over, give him a subscribe. If you need to do a Toyota LSD to AutoLokka rear diff, this man has the video. That will be in the description below. Also, how good is my workbench? It's the scissor hoist, and it worked a treat, because we ran out of bench space for me to work on. So anyways, getting back to the Lokka, I have installed the little spacer ring. It's a shiny one at the bottom, where the Lokka actually sits in, and then you are actually required to use a clutch plate, or in some applications you are required to use a clutch plate. So now I'm using the feeler gauge just to make sure I have the right gap. So as you can see, I'm just greasing up the actual AutoLokka, the ratcheting teeth on it, as the video said. If you actually look inside of the LSD housing, you can see the shiny spacing ring, and then there's also some clutch packs sitting under there. So I actually required those to get the correct measurements on the feeler gauges to ensure they are inside the specs. As part of checking if everything is up to spec, it does actually require you to reassemble the LSD casing, just to make sure that all the measurements are 100% correct. So I did push all the feeler gauges together to get 140 thou to ensure that it was all correct, and it was all correct after I had put in the right amount of clutch plates. Now I'm just pulling it apart, and then I'll be doing the final fit and finish. From there, we can look at putting the LSD casing back together and putting those bolts in, and then it is the ring gear, and then it's the carrier bearings and the bearing caps, and then it's all back together. So the LSD casing's all back together. Now I am trying to put the ring gear on. So the best way to do this would be to put the ring gear in an oven, and maybe the center in a freezer, and then you'd be able to slip it on, as I'm sure if you've watched any other diff videos, that's what people have done. However, I have just put 2 bolts in. I've just done a little bit of tightening to bring the ring gear up slowly and just each on each side so it pulls up nice and evenly and doesn't get jarred. Then after we've done that, we need to remove the 2 bolts, and then I am still Loctiting all of the bolts because I just want to be 100% sure that it's all going to stay together. And then we also have to put those locking clips under it. So typically you would want to replace these every time you pull those bolts out, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get any in the right amount of time or on the day. So this is what we're going with. Also, keep in mind, I still didn't have full confidence that this locker was going to work because there's no actual way to test it from the outside because you need a fair amount of torque to unlock it. So you'd be able to check if it is locked, but not if it would be able to be unlocked. So I still went on with reassembly, even though I wasn't confident, but I had nothing to fear. Things I had to do before I could actually reinstall the diff center into the housing was torque these bolts all up to spec. So they actually have 3 different specs. It starts off at around 30 to 32 Newton meters, and then it steps up to in the 40 or 50 Newton meters around there. And then it actually steps up a lot and then goes to, I think it was 80 or 90. So I had to swap to a different tool to make that work. And then it is just the locking tabs on the bolts. Again, I do wish I had a proper diff holder because look at that movement. It was also a bit of a prick to do with the tension wrench. Time to put the center back in the housing. Then the bearing caps go on along with the bearing preload nuts, and I've made sure that they are all exactly the same as the photos I've taken, and they're all sitting in the same spot and are just as tight as they were when they came apart. At this point, I had realized that the bearing cap bolts did not have any Loctite on them. And one half of my brain said, she'll be right. The other half said, come on, mate, just fucking pull them out and then do it again. So I just pulled them out and then put some Loctite on and then put it all back together. Then it can go straight back in the housing. Of course, we still have to torque up those bearing cap bolts. Now that the diff is reassembled, we are going to reinstall it into the vehicle. So this is pretty easy, just slip it straight up there and then you've just got to put the nuts on with the locking washers and then that's it. Now that I've reassembled everything, axles are in, drive shafts in, we can actually test it. That's what we want to see. So every time we're hearing that ratcheting noise, that is actually it unlocking. So it unlocks when there's a different amount of load on the other wheel, but not when it is under load from the drive shaft. Ooh yeah, test time. So we're back at Paddy's Swamp now that we've installed the rear locker, and it's about time that we get some more comparison shots. So we'll do a comparison from fully unlocked to the front locked to the rear locked to then the twin locked. So let's get into that. So first obstacle that we hit with the unlocked Hilux, we actually couldn't get up to the main part of the obstacle. I did have to opt for a different line and come in from a different angle. So let's have a look at that. How's that for a wheel lift on the rear? So obviously none of the drive is going to any of the wheels that I need it to go to. So this is also a bust in the unlocked Hilux. Now let's compare it with the front locked Hilux. It breezes through the first part of the obstacle where we were having the issues with the traction on all the wheels because, again, being unlocked, one wheel was just spinning and the one that was actually under load was not. Now that we're coming up to the actual main obstacle, let's see how the front locker performs. Easy, it just pops itself up. Now let's look at the rear locker. Now time for the rear locker. Let's just see how it goes. So I won't be using the front lock for this first attempt. definitely see that the front locker would have helped there, but the rear locker still managed to push it up. Now to do it with both lockers on. No two ways about it, that definitely had the most control. Now let's have a look at the next obstacle. Now going back to the fully unlocked Hilux, we'll see how it climbs the next obstacle. I did find through this bit with the rear and the front locker, it was keeping a little bit more traction, so I was able to keep the car off the bank a bit more, but when it was unlocked, I was kind of just riding the bank and didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pop it up.
So exactly what Nick said, I am going to have to pop it up, which is something that you don't really have to do if you have a front lock. So let's see the front lock difference. So with the front locker, it just idles up it. Let's see how it goes rear locked and twin locked. So with rear locker only, you can see it's on a bit of an angle there, and all the drive is going to the passenger side because the front lock isn't on. So this one, we might need to press the magic buttons, and once we do, it'll just claw its way through. Just engage that front locker and off we go. How easy is that with the front locker engaged? It just crawls up it. As a bonus, I did try another little obstacle when I took it out after installing the rear locker. So this one was a pretty hectic hole, and it wasn't this bad last time I came out. The rain has dug it out quite a fair bit, but it's just goes to show that just because you've got twin lockers doesn't mean you can just crawl everything. Again, if I had bigger tyres, I would be able to just crawl straight up this, but that is quite a deep hole, and obviously with how small the tyres are, it's not going to work like that. And there's definitely ample space to go around here, but I did just want to test, and I'm not doing much there but spinning wheels. So let's just try a different approach. After a few more attempts, I did opt for a different line, but it also just goes to show that it was holding a lot of extra traction with these lockers on. After a bit of a reset and straddling the rut, it is just going to climb straight over it. I was a little bit sketched that I was going to slip in here, but this is just a little bit of a bonus obstacle that I thought I'd give it a crack. But definitely, I think if I do a big tour in this car, it's going to need to be on 35s. So there we go, there is the AutoLokka, rear AutoLokka installed. So it did have an LSD in it, pulled that all out, and then put the AutoLokka in. So I was very sketch with it because I haven't pulled a diff apart, and I was worried that I was going to somehow blow my diff apart, but I wasn't playing with any pinion bearing preload or anything like that. But as you saw, it still helped on the track. Obviously it's not going to be as helpful as a front locker because the front locker is actually pulling you up the track. Instead the rear locker is kind of just pushing you. I did notice a difference going up some of those obstacles. It definitely made an impact. But now she's a twin locked Hilux, so I think it's time to start doing a bit more forward driving. So I plan to do a video a month. I'm going to explore around my area and work my way out in Victoria, and then I do want to plan a trip further down the track. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one, which will be a bit of different content to what I normally do. So looking forward to doing that one. Catches. So don't get the fuck me. Don't